My neighbor falsely accused my dog of attacking him to put him down and conspired with my sister to force me from my home. They organized a smear campaign and made my life hell, so I recorded everything and orchestrated their complete social and legal downfall. I adopted my dog Max from a municipal shelter a year after my husband died. I always joked that it was my husband in dog form. Same birthday, same smile, same eyes that gleamed like they were trying to heal the entire world, and everyone loved him. Until one day, when my neighbor Brett knocked on my gate. "Hey, what's up? Your mutt bit me last night while you were on your little walk," he exclaimed without letting me speak. I didn't even know what to say, but Brett didn't have that problem. "Listen up, little girl. You can either hand me $50,000 for the damages, or I'll sue and have the pooch put down." He then gestured over to the damages in question, which was a medium-large plaster covering a small area of his arm. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for the judicial system, but Max can barely walk up the stairs by himself, so I didn't understand how he'd be able to run, jump over the 6-foot gate, and attack Brett. And I guess he noticed my apprehension, because he stormed back into his house and slammed the door shut. I was going to figure this out by myself, but not even an hour later I heard a knock at the door. It wasn't Brett. It was my sister, Janet. She told me Brett had texted her asking to talk some sense into me, and she immediately took his side, which stung more than I expected. We used to be best friends, like the sun and the moon, but after my husband died and she saw how much his family had gifted me with, something switched. Suddenly, I was the most entitled and selfish person she's ever met, and this was no different, because soon she began her usual spiel about how I needed to think of others, and Max was a nuisance. I knew she didn't believe me when I told her I would think about it, but it got her to shut up and leave, which was good enough for me, lol. The next morning, I woke up to a gift in the post. It was a HOA, Homeowners Association, fine for harboring a dangerous animal. As I looked over the letter, I looked over at Max, whose head was resting on my lap, his tail wagging like he was dreaming about catching a tennis ball. That's when I knew he was worth fighting for. Over the next few days, Brett's cousin, who worked as a pet euthanasia technician for animal control, barged into my home twice a day for random inspections. And Max was friendly, the type to lick a stranger's face for no reason. But anytime his cousin came in, Max would hide behind my legs and pee all over the carpet. That's when I knew I had to hire a lawyer. Luckily, the first one I hired plastered on a huge smile as I described the case. She told me this was open and shut, and we were going to save Max and get rich in the process. But it wasn't even 24 hours later when she told me she was going to drop my case and refund the retainer fee. I tried to call her back or ask for an explanation, but she never responded. The next two lawyers went the exact same way. I didn't know much about the law, but I knew there was no way this could be normal. It was around this time that Brett reached out again. His text read, "So are you ready to finally put the mutt down?" That's when it hit me. Brett's daddy was rich, like golf club membership, Rolex watch collection rich, and he was using him to pull strings to get my lawyers to drop me. This was never about the money. It was about getting Max unalived. And if he wanted to leave me with nothing, I was going to return the favor. I started documenting everything. Every time Brett showed up at my gate, every threatening text, every inspection from his cousin. I took photos of Max playing gently with the neighborhood kids at the park, videos of him wagging his tail when the mailman came by. I needed proof that my dog wasn't the monster Brett was painting him to be. One afternoon, while scrolling through Facebook, I noticed something interesting. Brett had recently applied to a therapy dog certification program and been rejected. The comments on his post were telling. Several people mentioned his anger issues and aggressive behavior at the local dog park. One woman even wrote about how he'd screamed at her puppy for sniffing his shoes. The pieces started falling into place. I reached out to my neighbors, asking if anyone had security cameras that might have caught something the night Brett claimed Max bit him. Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down said she'd check her footage. The next morning, she knocked on my door with a USB drive in her hand. "You need to see this," she said, her face serious. We watched the footage together on my laptop. There was Brett, clear as day, in his backyard around 11 p.m. He was holding what looked like a garden rake. Then he did something that made my stomach turn. He pressed the metal prongs against his own arm, wincing as he dragged them across his skin. That lying piece of, I caught myself before finishing. Mrs. Chen patted my shoulder. "I'll testify if you need me to." Armed with this evidence, I drove straight to the police station. The officer at the desk took my USB drive and said they'd look into it. I felt hopeful for the first time in days. But when I called to follow up the next afternoon, they told me the file had been corrupted. Something about a system error. "That's impossible," I said. "It was working perfectly yesterday." "I'm sorry, ma'am. These things happen with digital files sometimes." I knew it wasn't a coincidence. Brett's father had connections everywhere in this town. Things got worse when Janet started spreading rumors at our church. I found out from Catherine, one of the few friends who still talked to me, that Janet had been telling everyone I'd gone mentally unstable since my husband's death. She claimed I was projecting my grief onto Max, treating him like a human instead of getting proper help. "She said you talk to the dog like it's your dead husband," Catherine whispered after service one Sunday. "People are starting to worry about you." I watched as former friends avoided eye contact, whispered when I walked by. Even the pastor suggested I might benefit from grief counseling instead of focusing so much on that animal. The next escalation came on a Tuesday morning. I woke up to find my entire vegetable garden destroyed. Every plant I'd lovingly tended was wilted and brown. The smell of chemicals hung in the air. I found a note tucked under my doormat. "This is what happens to things that don't belong." I installed security cameras that afternoon, positioning them to cover every angle of my property. But during the next inspection, Brett's cousin Jonathan somehow managed to disable them. He claimed Max had jumped up and knocked into him, causing him to stumble into the camera mount. By the time he left, 3 of my 4 cameras were mysteriously offline. The revelation about Janet came by accident. I was at the grocery store when I saw them together, Brett and Janet holding holding hands in the frozen food aisle. She was laughing at something he said, leaning into him like they'd been together for years. When she spotted me, her face went pale. "How long?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's not what you think," she started. "How long?" "6 months," Brett said, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Not that it's any of your business." 6 months. She'd been dating him for 6 months while pretending to be the concerned sister. Every visit, every lecture about thinking of others, she'd been working with him. The HOA emergency meeting notice arrived 2 days later. Vote on the removal of dangerous animal from property at 42 Maple Street. They'd scheduled it for that Friday, giving me barely any time to prepare. I spent the next 2 days knocking on doors, talking to every neighbor who'd ever smiled at Max. Mrs. Patterson remembered how Max had found her cat when it went missing. The Johnsons talked about how their toddler learned to walk by holding on to Max's fur. Even cranky Mr. Williams admitted Max had never once barked during his afternoon naps. "We'll be there," Mrs. Patterson promised. This is wrong. The meeting was held in the community center. Brett sat in the front row with a stack of papers. His father, a man I'd only seen in the society pages of our local paper, sat beside him in an expensive suit. Janet was there too, avoiding my eyes. Brett stood up first, presenting what he claimed were veterinary records showing Max had rabies. The documents looked official, complete with letterhead and signatures. "This dog is a public health hazard," he announced. "It's only a matter of time before it attacks a child." I felt my hands shaking as I stood up. "Those records are fake. I had Max tested this morning." I held up the real veterinary report. "He's completely healthy. No rabies, no aggression markers, nothing." Brett's father stood up then. "Anyone who votes against my son's proposal should know that I have excellent lawyers. If this dog harms anyone, I'll personally sue every person who allowed it to remain in this neighborhood." The room went quiet. I watched as several of my supporters shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One by one, they looked away. When it came time to vote, only Mrs. Patterson and the Johnsons raised their hands in my favor. I left the meeting feeling defeated. Max greeted me at the door, tail wagging, completely unaware of how close he was to being taken away. That's when I remembered Dr. Nathan, my late husband's best friend from veterinary school. He was a certified veterinary behaviorist now, working at a clinic 2 towns over. "Of course I'll evaluate Max," Nathan said when I called. "I should have reached out sooner. I'm sorry. We scheduled the evaluation for the following Monday. I thought it would be straightforward, but I should have known Brett wouldn't give up easily." As Nathan began the temperament test in my backyard, I heard barking from the street. Brett's cousin suddenly appeared at my gate with 2 aggressive-looking dogs straining against their leashes. "Just walking by," Jonathan called out, though I'd never seen him walk dogs before. The dogs were snarling, throwing themselves against the fence. Max's ears went back, and he pressed against my leg, but he didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just stood there, trembling slightly but staying calm. Nathan documented everything. "This is remarkable," he said. "Most dogs would react aggressively to that level of provocation. Max's temperament is exceptional." His professional assessment carried weight that Brett's money couldn't override. The official report stated that Max posed no threat to public safety and showed remarkable restraint even under stress. Brett must have realized he was losing. That night, around 2 a.m., I heard Max whimpering. I found him cowering in the corner of the living room. The back door was slightly open. I grabbed my phone and crept toward the kitchen, where I could hear someone moving around. Brett was in my backyard, holding what looked like a piece of meat. The smell coming from it made my eyes water. Some kind of irritant, designed to agitate Max into biting. "Come here, doggy," he was saying. "Come get a treat." I hit record on my phone just as Max appeared in the doorway, but instead of going for the meat, Max backed away, whining. That's when Brett grabbed him by the collar, trying to force the meat toward his face. "Stop!" I shouted. Brett spun around, still holding Max. "He attacked me. You saw it. I saw you break into my house and assault my dog." I kept recording. "And so will the police." He dropped Max and tried to grab my phone, but I'd already backed into the house. I locked the door and called 911 while Brett pounded on the glass, demanding I let him in. The police found the meat in his pocket, later tested to contain capsaicin and other irritants designed to cause pain and aggression in dogs. They arrested him for trespassing and animal cruelty. During the hearing, everything came out. Janet broke down on the stand, admitting she'd given Brett copies of my keys and my daily schedule. She'd hoped that if I was forced to move, she could convince me to sell the house and split the inheritance from my husband's family. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. I thought it wasn't fair that you got everything." The judge reviewed all the evidence, including Brett's history of filing false complaints against other neighbors' pets. Apparently mine wasn't the first dog he'd targeted. 3 other families had been forced to rehome their pets after Brett's harassment. Brett received 6 months of community service and a restraining order that prevented him from coming within 500 feet of me or Max. His father, mortified by the public scandal and the negative attention it brought to his business, cut off Brett's access to the family money. Janet faced her own consequences. Word spread quickly through our church and community about what she'd done. She found herself uninvited from social gatherings, ignored at the grocery store. The betrayal of trying to steal from your own grieving sister didn't sit well with anyone. The HOA board, no longer under the influence of Brett's father's threats, officially cleared Max of all accusations. They even sent a formal apology letter, acknowledging that the emergency meeting had been improperly conducted. One by one, neighbors who had turned their backs began reaching out. Mrs. Williams brought over a casserole and apologized for not standing up for us. The Thompsons invited Max to their daughter's birthday party. Even the mailman started bringing special treats for Max on his route. Max lived out his remaining years surrounded by love and protection. He never knew how close he'd come to being taken away, how many people had conspired against him. All he knew was that his favorite spot on the couch was always warm, his bowl was always full, and his human was always there to scratch behind his ears. Sometimes I still see Janet around town. She always looks away first. Brett moved out of the neighborhood after his community service ended. I heard he tried the same scheme in another town but got arrested again when they found our case in his background check. As for me and Max, we found our peace. Every morning we'd sit on the porch and watch the sunrise. His eyes still gleamed with that same light that reminded me of my husband, that look that said everything would be okay. And in the end, it was. The morning after Brett's arrest, I thought the worst was behind us. Max seemed more relaxed, actually eating his breakfast without constantly looking over his shoulder. I was washing his bowl when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you won? This isn't over." I blocked the number immediately, but within minutes, another message came through from a different one, then another. By noon, I'd received over 30 threatening texts from various numbers. Some were subtle warnings about accidents that happen to pets, while others graphically described what could happen to dogs who bite innocent people. I took screenshots of everything and drove to the police station. The same officer who'd taken my report about Brett looked tired when he saw me approach. "The restraining order only covers Brett specifically," he explained after reviewing the messages. "Unless we can prove he's sending these, there's not much we can do. But who else would?" "Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but without concrete evidence." I left feeling more vulnerable than before. That evening, I discovered my mailbox had been stuffed with printed articles about dog attacks, each one highlighted with red marker. The last page was a photo of Max from my social media, his face circled with the words, "Next time," scrawled across it. Catherine called me that night, her voice hushed. "I overheard something at church today. Brett's been talking to people, convincing them you trained Max to attack him. He's showing everyone photos of his injuries and claiming the police are corrupt. But he was arrested. There's evidence. He's telling people you seduced one of the officers. I'm sorry, but I thought you should know what's being said." The campaign against me intensified over the following days. My veterinarian called to inform me that someone had reported them for enabling a dangerous animal owner. The groomer I'd used for years suddenly had no available appointments. Even the pet store clerk seemed nervous when I came in for dog food. Max started showing signs of stress. He wouldn't eat unless I hand-fed him. He jumped at every noise, cowered when anyone walked past our house. The confident, loving dog I'd known was disappearing before my eyes. Then came the first real escalation. I was walking Max early one morning, trying to avoid other dog walkers, when a car sped past us. Someone threw a bag out the window that exploded on impact, covering us both in what smelled like rotten fish and motor oil. Max yelped and tried to run, nearly pulling me into traffic. A woman jogging nearby helped me get him home. She mentioned seeing the same car circling the neighborhood for days. Blue sedan, tinted windows, made me nervous enough that I started carrying pepper spray. Bathing Max took hours. Whatever was in that bag had matted his fur and burned my hands. The vet said it was likely a combination of fish oil and industrial cleaner, designed to cause skin irritation. Max needed medicated baths for a week. During this time, I noticed more disturbing changes in my neighborhood. People who'd apologized after Brett's arrest started avoiding me again. New "beware of dog" signs appeared on my street, all pointing toward my house. Someone had even spray-painted "dangerous dog" on the sidewalk outside my gate, though it was cleaned up before I could photograph it. Janet's role became clearer when Catherine discovered something shocking. My sister had started a private social media group called Neighborhood Safety Watch, where she shared concerns about dangerous pets. The group had over 200 members, all being fed stories about Max's history of aggression and my mental instability. "She's posting photos of you from years ago," Catherine showed me on her phone, "claiming they're recent and you look unhinged. She's even sharing your therapy appointments from after your husband died as proof you're unstable." The violation felt like a physical blow. Those therapy sessions had been sacred, my safe space to grieve. Now Janet was weaponizing them against me. The next incident happened at the park. I'd started taking Max there at dawn, hoping to avoid people. We were alone when 3 large dogs appeared, no owners in sight. They circled us, growling. Max pressed against my legs, shaking. I recognized one of them. It belonged to Brett's friend from the country club. I tried to back away slowly, but they followed. One lunged at Max, who yelped but didn't fight back. I screamed for help, holding Max as the dogs snapped at us. Finally, a park ranger arrived and scattered them with an air horn. "Those dogs were definitely dumped here on purpose," he said, helping me check Max for injuries. "All 3 had collars but no tags. That's not accidental." He filed a report, but without proof of who released them, nothing came of it. Max had scratches on his legs and was so traumatized he wouldn't leave the house for days. The psychological warfare continued. Pizza deliveries I hadn't ordered showed up at all hours. My garden, which I'd replanted, was destroyed again, this time with salt, ensuring nothing would grow. Someone kept signing my address up for every mailing list imaginable. My mailbox overflowed with junk mail daily. Then I found out about the petition. Janet and Brett's supporters had started collecting signatures to have me declared an unfit pet owner. They claimed I was harboring a dangerous animal despite multiple incidents, and posed a threat to neighborhood safety. The petition already had over 100 signatures. "They're going door to door," Mrs. Patterson warned me, telling people if they don't sign, they're liable if Max attacks someone, fear-mongering at its worst. I tried to counter their narrative, but I was one person against an organized campaign. For every neighbor I spoke to, they'd already reached 5. Some people signed just to make them go away. Others genuinely believed the lies they'd been fed. The breaking point came when someone called animal control with an anonymous tip that I was running an illegal dog fighting ring in my basement. The officer who showed up looked embarrassed. "I have to investigate all reports," he apologized, glancing around my obviously normal home. "Though this is the 5th call about you this week. Someone really has it out for you." That night, I couldn't sleep. Max curled up beside me, occasionally whimpering in his dreams. I stroked his fur and wondered how long we could endure this. Moving felt like letting them win, but staying meant subjecting Max to continued trauma. The next morning brought a new horror. My car tires had been slashed and the windshield was cracked. A note under the wiper read, said, "Leave town or the dog gets it next." I called Nathan, desperate for advice. He was furious when I explained everything. "This is organized harassment," he said. "Have you considered getting a lawyer?" I tried. "No one will take the case. It's like Brett's father has— Wait, I know someone. She's from the next county. No connections to Brett's family. Let me call her." While waiting for Nathan's contact, I discovered something that changed everything. Catherine had been doing her own investigation and found Brett's mistake. He'd been using a fake social media account to coordinate the harassment, but he'd logged in from his work computer. The IT department at his company had records. "My cousin works there," Catherine explained. "Brett doesn't know the company monitors all internet usage. There are timestamps, IP addresses, everything. We had him. Screenshots of Brett organizing the dog dumping at the park, arranging the car that threw substances at us, even discussing ways to make me crack so I'd leave town. He'd violated the restraining order hundreds of times. But before I could take this evidence to the police, Janet made her move. She showed up at my door with two official-looking people. "These are social workers," she announced. "I've filed for emergency intervention based on your mental state. You're a danger to yourself and others." The social workers looked uncomfortable, but explained they had to conduct an evaluation. They asked invasive questions about my mental health, my relationship with Max, my grief over my husband. Janet had coached them well, providing just enough truth mixed with lies to paint a convincing picture. "She talks to the dog like it's her dead husband," Janet told them. "She's delusional, refuses to see reality. I'm worried she'll hurt herself or someone else." I stayed calm, answered their questions honestly. I showed them Max's veterinary records, Nathan's behavioral assessment, even character references from neighbors who still supported me. The social workers took notes, said they'd be in touch. After they left, Janet lingered. "Just give up," she said. "Move away. Start fresh. This is for your own good." "This is about the house, isn't it? You want me gone so you can claim I abandoned the property." Her face hardened. "You don't deserve what his family gave you. I'm the one who supported you both for years. Where's my reward? Get out." She left, but not before adding, "Brett's not giving up. Neither am I." That night, I installed indoor cameras. If they were going to escalate, I needed evidence. Max stayed close, sensing my anxiety. We'd become prisoners in our own home. The next attack was more personal. Someone hacked my social media accounts, posting disturbing content that made me look unstable. Photos of dead animals with captions about what happens to bad dogs. By the time I regained control, screenshots had been shared throughout Janet's safety group. Local news picked up the story. Neighborhood dispute escalates, dangerous dog or targeted harassment. The coverage was biased, focusing on Brett's injuries and painting me as an unstable woman who'd threatened multiple neighbors. They didn't mention his arrest or the evidence of self-harm. Dr. Nathan's lawyer friend Sarah finally called. She'd reviewed everything and was appalled. "This is coordinated harassment, possibly conspiracy," she said. "But we need more concrete evidence linking Brett to the recent incidents despite the restraining order." I gave her Catherine's information about the work computer. Sarah's eyes lit up. "This could be huge. If we can prove he's orchestrating this campaign while under a restraining order, he's looking at serious charges." But Brett must have sensed the walls closing in. The harassment intensified. Dead animals started appearing on my doorstep. Squirrels, birds, even a cat. Each had a note. "Your dog is next." I reported everything, but the police seemed overwhelmed. "We're doing our best," one officer said, but without catching someone in the act. Max stopped eating entirely. The vet said it was severe anxiety. He prescribed medication, but I could see my dog fading. The light in his eyes, the one that reminded me so much of my husband, was dimming. One evening, while trying to coax Max to eat, I heard glass breaking. Someone had thrown a brick through my living room window. Attached was a photo of Max at the vet's office that morning. They were watching us everywhere. I called Sarah in tears. "I can't do this anymore. They're going to hurt him. Don't give up now. We're so close. The subpoena for Brett's work computer goes through tomorrow." But that night, everything escalated beyond what I could have imagined. I woke to Max barking, something he never did anymore. The house was filled with smoke. Someone had lit fires in trash cans around my property, creating a smokescreen. I grabbed Max and ran outside, only to find people in my yard. They scattered when they saw me, but not before I recognized one, Brett's cousin Jonathan, despite the restraining order that should have kept him away. The fire department arrived quickly, putting out the fires before they could spread. But the message was clear. They could get to us anytime. "This has to stop," the fire chief said. "Whatever's going on here, someone's going to get hurt." I spent the rest of the night in my car with Max, too afraid to go back inside. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I couldn't wait for the legal system. I needed to take control. I started with Janet's group. Using a fake account, I infiltrated her safety watch and documented everything. The lies, the coordination of harassment, the glee with which they planned each attack. I took screenshots of every post, every comment. Then I created my own social media campaign. The truth about Max went viral within days. I posted the security footage of Brett hurting himself, the veterinary assessments, testimonies from neighbors who'd been threatened into silence. I shared the harassment I'd endured, the dead animals, the fires. Public opinion began to shift. People who'd believed Brett's lies started questioning the narrative. Local animal rights groups got involved, demanding justice for Max. The story spread beyond our town. Brett panicked. He made a crucial mistake, posting from his real account. That lying witch will pay for this. Her and that mangy mutt. Sarah pounced on it. Combined with the evidence from his work computer, we had enough for serious charges. But the police seemed reluctant to act, and I suspected Brett's father's influence was still at play. That's when unexpected help arrived. Dr. Nathan had reached out to his professional network. Veterinarians from 3 states had been following the story and were outraged. They organized a protest outside City Hall, demanding action. "No animal should be persecuted based on lies," Nathan spoke to the crowd, "and no pet owner should endure terrorism for protecting their companion." The media attention exploded. Suddenly, reporters wanted to hear my side. I gave interviews with Max beside me, his gentle nature evident to anyone watching. Support poured in from across the country. Brett's father could no longer ignore the negative attention. His business was receiving hundreds of complaints daily. Clients were pulling contracts. The family name he'd worked so hard to build was being destroyed. He came to my house himself, the first time I'd seen him up close. He looked older than his newspaper photos, worn down. "What will it take to end this?" he asked. "Justice," I replied. "Your son needs to face consequences. Real ones." "He's sick," the man admitted. "Has been since childhood. We've covered for him too long." He revealed Brett had done this before in other towns, always targeting pet owners, always escalating until families fled. They'd paid settlements, swept it under the rug, but this time was different. "You fought back," he said. "No one's ever done that before." I recorded our conversation. His admission that they'd known about Brett's behavior and enabled it was damning. When I posted it online, the remaining support for Brett evaporated. Janet's world crumbled too. Her safety watch group disbanded as members realized they'd been manipulated. Her reputation was destroyed. She lost her job when her employer saw the extent of her involvement. She came to my door one last time, no longer the confident instigator. "I'm sorry," she said. "I let jealousy poison everything. I destroyed our relationship for money that was never mine." I didn't forgive her. Some betrayals cut too deep, but I told her I hoped she'd learn from this, become better. She left town shortly after, unable to face the community's judgment. The district attorney, facing public pressure and mounting evidence, finally filed serious charges against Brett. Violation of restraining order, conspiracy, harassment, cyberstalking, animal cruelty, the list was extensive. His father's lawyers couldn't make this disappear. Too many people were watching. The evidence was overwhelming. Brett's reign of terror was ending. During this time, something beautiful happened. Max began to recover. With the harassment stopped, he slowly regained his appetite. His tail started wagging again. The medication helped, but I think knowing he was safe made the real difference. Neighbors who'd been silent started visiting, apologizing for their cowardice. They brought toys for Max, treats, even offers to testify if needed. Our community was healing. Mrs. Patterson organized a block party in Max's honor to celebrate a good dog and a brave owner, she said. Watching Max play with children, accepting belly rubs from strangers, I saw glimpses of his old self returning. The legal proceedings moved forward. Brett's work computer revealed years of similar harassment campaigns. Former victims came forward sharing their stories. The pattern was clear and damning. Sarah built an airtight case. "He won't wiggle out of this," she assured me. "Too many eyes are watching." But Brett had one last card to play. He attempted to flee town, violating his bail conditions. Police caught him at the county line with a car full of evidence he'd been trying to destroy. That final act sealed his fate. No judge would show leniency to someone who'd terrorized multiple families and then tried to run. His father's money couldn't buy him out of this. As the hearings approached, I focused on Max's recovery. We took daily walks again, slowly rebuilding his confidence. He learned to trust again, to play without fear. His eyes began to shine with that familiar light. One morning, sitting on our porch, Max suddenly licked my face, something he hadn't done since the harassment began. In that moment, I knew we'd survived. They'd tried to break us, to tear apart the bond between a woman and her dog, but they'd failed. The sunrise painted the sky in brilliant colors. Max's tail wagged as he watched birds in the yard. We'd won, but more importantly, we'd endured, together. The hearing date arrived faster than expected. I dressed Max in his therapy dog vest from years ago, the one my husband had bought when we'd talked about getting him certified. Sarah met us outside the courthouse, her briefcase bulging with evidence. "Brett's lawyer is pushing for dismissal," she warned, "claims the restraining order violations were misunderstandings." Inside, Brett sat with his legal team, 3 lawyers in suits that probably cost more than my car. He smirked when he saw us, mouthing something I couldn't catch. His father sat behind him, stone-faced. The prosecutor presented our evidence methodically, the security footage of Brett injuring himself, the work computer records showing him coordinating harassment, the veterinary reports confirming Max's gentle temperament. Each piece built our case stronger. Brett's lawyers fought hard, claiming the social media posts were fake. The computer records could have been anyone. They painted Brett as a victim of a vindictive neighbor who'd trained her dog to attack. Then Sarah played her ace. She'd found 3 more families Brett had targeted in other counties. One by one, they testified via video link. An elderly woman whose cat was poisoned after she refused Brett's advances. A young couple forced to rehome their rescue dog after months of harassment. A single father who'd moved states to escape Brett's campaign against his son's rabbit. The pattern was undeniable. Brett's father shifted in his seat, his jaw clenched. Even his expensive lawyers looked uncomfortable. During a recess, I took Max outside for a bathroom break. A man approached us in the parking lot. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him until he spoke. "I'm Officer Martinez. I took your corrupted file report months ago." My body tensed. Max pressed against my leg. "I need to tell you something," he continued, glancing around nervously. "That file wasn't corrupted. My supervisor made me delete it, said it was orders from above. He handed me a flash drive. I kept a copy. Thought you should know the truth." Before I could respond, he walked away quickly. I tucked the drive into my pocket, my hands shaking. Back in court, Brett took the stand. His story kept changing. First, Max had jumped the fence. Then, he'd been walking by when Max attacked through the gate. Finally, he claimed I'd commanded Max to bite him. Sarah destroyed each version with evidence. Security footage showed Brett never left his property that night. Veterinary records proved Max's arthritis made jumping impossible. Multiple witnesses confirmed I'd been inside watching television when the alleged attack occurred. Brett's composure cracked. He started yelling about how I'd ruined his life, how Max was dangerous, how his father would destroy me. The judge had to call for order twice. That's when Catherine arrived with printed screenshots from Brett's dating profile. Active for years, he'd messaged dozens thousands of women, always asking about their pets. Several had blocked him after he'd become obsessive about their animals. This establishes a pattern of fixation on pets, Sarah argued. Not just harassment, but a documented obsession. The judge reviewed everything, his expression grave, but just as he was about to speak, Brett's father stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to address the court." His lawyers tried to stop him, but he waved them off. He walked to the front, looking every bit the powerful businessman despite his obvious exhaustion. "My son needs help," he said simply. "I've enabled this behavior for too long. Whatever the court decides, I'll ensure he gets psychiatric treatment." Brett exploded, screaming at his father, calling him a traitor. Security had to restrain him. The outburst only reinforced everything we'd presented. The judge's decision was swift, guilty on all counts. Brett would serve 18 months in jail, followed by mandatory psychiatric treatment and a permanent restraining order. He was also banned from owning pets or living within 1,000 feet of any animal shelter or veterinary clinic. As they led Brett away, he locked eyes with me. The hatred there made me shiver. This wasn't over in his mind. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Sarah fielded most questions while I stood with Max, who handled the attention remarkably well. His tail even wagged when a child asked to pet him. Brett's father approached before we left. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for everything. I'll make sure he can't hurt anyone else." He handed me a check. I started to refuse, but he insisted. "For Max's medical bills, and yours, it's the least I can do." The amount made my eyes water. It would cover everything and more. That evening, I thought we could finally relax. Max seemed lighter, playing with a toy for the first time in months, but around midnight my phone rang. Unknown number. "You think you've won?" The voice was female, disguised but familiar. "This isn't over." The line went dead. I checked my security cameras, saw nothing unusual, but sleep wouldn't come. The next morning brought a new nightmare. Every veterinary clinic in town had received an anonymous report that I was abusing Max. Sarah called furious. Someone had filed a civil suit claiming emotional distress from being forced to live near a dangerous animal. "It's harassment," she said. "We'll fight it." But I was exhausted. How many more battles would there be? Mrs. Patterson stopped by with disturbing news. "Someone's been going door to door with a new petition. Claims you're unstable, that the trial was rigged. They're wearing masks. Won't say who they are." I installed more cameras, upgraded my security system. Max picked up on my anxiety, reverting to his fearful behavior. We were prisoners again, despite Brett being behind bars. The civil suit moved forward. The plaintiff remained anonymous, hidden behind shell companies and legal maneuvers. Sarah suspected Brett's remaining supporters but couldn't prove it. During depositions, they brought up my husband's death, my therapy sessions, even my financial records. Nothing was off limits. They painted me as an unstable widow who'd anthropomorphized her dog to a dangerous degree. Max's health declined under the stress. He developed digestive issues, lost weight despite my efforts. The vet prescribed more medication, recommended reducing stress. But how could I when we were under constant attack? One night, I found a package on my doorstep. No delivery truck, no doorbell ring. Inside was a collar, not Max's, but similar. It reeked of chemicals and had a note. "Next time, it won't be empty." I called the police, but they seemed tired of my calls. Without proof of who sent it, became their standard response. Sarah discovered the anonymous plaintiff's identity through a filing error. It was Brett's cousin's wife, someone I'd never even met. She'd been promised money from Brett's father's company if she kept the pressure on me. "This is witness intimidation," Sarah said. "They're trying to break you before Brett's appeal." Appeal? I'd forgotten he could appeal. The cousin's wife dropped the suit once exposed, but damage was done. Legal bills were mounting. The check from Brett's father helped, but lawyers weren't cheap. Then came a breakthrough. Officer Martinez reached out again, this time with more information. He'd been investigating corruption in the department. Several officers had been taking bribes from Brett's father's associates. "I'm testifying to internal affairs next week," he said. "Thought you should know. Your case helped expose something bigger." But before he could testify, Martinez had an accident. His car went off the road late one night. He survived, but with memory issues. The investigation stalled. I knew then that Brett's reach extended further than we'd thought. Even in jail, he had influence. Max and I adapted to our new reality. We walked at odd hours, varied our routes. I carried pepper spray and a loud alarm. We avoided other dogs and people, which broke my heart. Max loved everyone, but I couldn't risk another setup. Catherine remained my lifeline, checking in daily. She'd started documenting everything too, creating backup files of all evidence. "If something happens to your copies," she said, though neither of us wanted to think about what something might be. Brett's appeal was denied, but his lawyers immediately filed another. The cycle continued. Each filing meant more depositions, more stress, more of Max cowering at every knock on the door. One morning, I found Max couldn't stand. His back legs gave out completely. The emergency vet ran tests, found his spine was deteriorating. "It's partly age," she said gently, "but stress accelerates these conditions." I carried him home, my heart breaking. He'd survived so much only to have his own body betray him. We started physical therapy, water treatments, anything to help him walk again. During one therapy session, a woman approached. "I'm Ellen," she said. "My dog went through something similar." "Brett Harrison?" I nodded, too tired to be surprised. "He targeted us 3 years ago," she continued. "We fought back like you did, won in court, but the harassment never really stopped. We moved eventually. Did it help? Yes and no. We got peace, but he just moved on to the next target. You're the first to really expose him." Her words haunted me. How many families had suffered suffered in silence. Max slowly improved with therapy. He could stand for short periods, take a few steps. His spirit remained unbroken, tail wagging whenever he saw me. But I knew our time was limited. Brett's supporters grew bolder as his release date approached. Yes, release date. Good behavior and overcrowding meant he'd serve barely half his sentence. The restraining order would remain. But what good was paper against obsession? I started preparing. New locks, upgraded cameras, self-defense classes. Max couldn't run anymore, could barely walk. If Brett came for him, I'd be his only defense. Sarah filed motion after motion to keep Brett locked up, citing the continued harassment. But without proof linking him directly to recent events, judges wouldn't extend his sentence. 2 weeks before his release, I made a decision. I contacted a friend in another state, arranged a safe house. We'd leave the night before Brett got out, start fresh somewhere new. But Janet must have been watching. She showed up at my door, no longer the confident woman who'd betrayed me. She looked hollow, desperate. "I know you're planning to leave," she said. "Take me with you." I almost laughed at the audacity, but then she explained. Brett's supporters had turned on her when she'd tried to distance herself. She'd received the same threats, the same harassment. "I created a monster," she admitted. "Now it's coming for me too." I didn't trust her, but I listened. She had information, recordings of Brett's supporters planning their next moves, evidence of bribery, proof of who'd been behind recent attacks. "Why should I believe you?" She pulled up her sleeve, showing bruises. "Because I'm their target now too." Sarah verified Janet's information. It was legitimate, enough to potentially keep Brett locked up longer, but using it meant trusting Janet again. Max made the decision for me. When Janet knelt beside him, he licked her hand. First time he'd acknowledged her in over a year. Dogs know things we don't. We worked with Sarah to submit the new evidence. Brett's release was delayed pending investigation. His supporters scattered, afraid of being implicated. The day Brett was supposed to be released came and went. He remained in custody, his lawyers frantically filing motions. But Janet's evidence was solid. New charges were filed. That evening, I sat with Max in our backyard. He couldn't chase squirrels anymore, but he watched them with the same joy. His breathing was labored, but his tail still wagged. The vet had been honest. Maybe weeks, possibly months if we were lucky. The stress had taken its toll, but he was safe. That's all that mattered. Janet left town as promised, seeking her own fresh start. She'd testified against Brett's network, burned every bridge. I still didn't forgive her, but I hoped she'd find peace. Mrs. Patterson organized another block party. This time, it was a gentler affair. Neighbors brought blankets for Max to lie on, treats soft enough for his aging teeth. Children read him stories while he dozed in the sun. Brett's final sentence came down. 5 years, no early release. His network dismantled, his father's influence broken. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was enough. That night, Max slept beside me as always. His breathing was rough, but his presence remained comforting. We'd won, but the victory had cost us both so much. I thought about my husband, how he'd loved this dog instantly at the shelter. "He's a fighter," he'd said. "Just needs someone to fight for him." I'd kept that promise. Through everything, I'd fought. And Max had fought too, harder than any dog should have to. The next morning, Max couldn't lift his head. I called the vet, knowing what came next. She arrived within an hour, gentle and understanding. "He's tired," she said softly, "but look how he watches you. He knows he's loved." I held Max as she prepared the injection. His eyes met mine, still gleaming with that familiar light. I told him about the park, about tennis balls and belly rubs. I promised my husband was waiting for him. His tail gave one last weak wag, then stillness. I buried him beneath the oak tree in our backyard, the one he'd loved to nap under. Mrs. Patterson helped, as did Catherine. Even some neighbors who'd once turned away came to pay respects. That evening, I found a package on my doorstep. Inside was a collar, Max's actual collar, the one he'd worn that first day home from the shelter. A note was attached. "Found this in storage. Thought you should have it back. He was the best boy. Nathan." I held the collar, remembering that first day, how Max had bounded into our lives, healing hearts he didn't know were broken. Brett was in prison. His network was destroyed. The harassment had ended, but the cost. I looked at the empty dog bed, the unused leash. The house felt hollow without the click of nails on hardwood, the gentle snoring at night. But then I remembered Max's last gift. In fighting for him, I'd found my strength again. I'd learned to stand up, to document, to demand justice. I discovered a community of supporters I never knew existed. The next morning, I drove to the municipal shelter. Not to adopt, I wasn't ready, but to volunteer, to help other dogs find their fighters. The shelter director recognized me from the news coverage. "We followed your story," she said. "What you did for Max inspired a lot of people." She showed me the new wing they'd built with donations that poured in during the trial. The Max Memorial Wing, the sign read, "For dogs who need extra love." Inside were the difficult cases, the old, the sick, the scared, dogs like Max who others might overlook. But each one had that same light in their eyes, that same capacity for love. I started volunteering twice a week, walking dogs, socializing the fearful ones, helping with adoptions. It wasn't the same as having Max, but it honored his memory. One day, a family came in. Their story sounded familiar. A neighbor had threatened their elderly dog, claiming it was dangerous. They were scared, unsure what to do. I sat with them for hours, sharing everything I'd learned. Document everything. Don't back down. Trust your dog. Fight for them. They left with hope and my phone number. "Call if you need anything," I said. That became my new normal, helping families facing similar situations. Sarah and I created a legal resource guide. Catherine managed a support group online. We built a network of our own, but for protection, not persecution. Brett served his full sentence. I know because I checked. He was released to a halfway house 3 states away, banned from returning. His father's company had folded after the scandal. Janet had disappeared entirely, starting over somewhere new. I still live in the same house. The garden grew back, stronger than before.